You ready?
Yeah, let's do this. Hey everybody, it's Bree Milani with Sky Insurance Brokers, and today I'm so excited to have on the Mottashed team, and this is exciting because I think you, Josh, was actually one of the first people that I ever asked to be on this podcast, and you totally never got back to me. And he's like, you never asked me. I'm like, I can find the text. I know I did for a fact, but I think we were going through like a crazy transaction at that time, so that's why it was like, we'll talk about that later. So finally, get to have you two on here. We're here.
We are here. So, by the way, just for the record, I did not dodge her.
Lies.
I even showed the text to Sarah like 3 times.
No, you didn't.
He still doesn't get back to me.
Yeah,
just
okay.
kidding, right?
So it's not just, so I shouldn't take
but
that personal.
It's okay. Sarah has me on D&D most of the time.
Yeah.
So.
True.
So that's
Anyway,
fair. I shouldn't be crying at night because Josh didn't get back to me.
Right. All right. Can't sleep at night. I'm sure that's the case.
It
That's what all the ladies say.
Yeah. Speaking of you, let's talk about you a little bit personally. So Josh Mottashed, you are the loan officer of this team, or on this team, kind of the main one, right? And you have a beautiful wife and 4 boys.
4 boys.
So your life is insane.
She is a blessing. Yeah, she's been in the industry for a long time.
I think that's when I met her. A handful
of people know. Yeah, you've met her years back, and short story back there. I don't want to get into that, but Jody's been out of the business, not because she wanted. I mean, partly because she wanted to focus on the kids, right? And our kids are spread out, as you guys know, in terms of age. All boys, and 25. One just got married. Crazy. It's crazy. And then 21, living at home, was out back, and then 16-year-old junior in high school, and then our 12-year-old, who is our little. But
that's awesome.
He's little, but not so little, and he's like a mini me.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah.
Poor Jody.
So just beware if you see a kid out there by the name of Blake Mottashed, just
dodge
run.
it.
Yeah, I always used to say like I could drop this kid off in the middle of like nowhere with like $1, and he'd probably start a small company or something.
I mean, you got to be proud of that though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of, mostly probably Jody in terms of the intelligence, and then the rest is just
the craziness is
the
you.
Craziness, right.
And you live on like what feels like a small farm.
Yeah.
With all your posts on Instagram, I'm like, my child would love to live there.
Oh, I know you guys can come over anytime. Honestly, Brie, bring the kids. Sarah comes over like once a week and just hangs out with our alpacas.
I feel like I don't believe that.
Eggs, usually.
Collects eggs. She does ask me, "Are you bringing me eggs today?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, you got to text Jody and ask her. By the way, if you need eggs,
like weekly, I need an egg delivery.
Yeah, I was out this morning.
I know, it was my fault.
Your fault,
forgot.
and you don't have any, and I didn't get any fresh eggs. I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
Okay, sounds
and
good.
Jody picked all the chickens so that they, made certain color eggs, right? Because they got to look right in the carton.
Has to be aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, geez.
That's funny.
But yeah, we're on acreage,
and
awesome. We got our pond so you can fish. And I mean, honestly, we bought right pre-COVID, and we were in rescue, larger house, smaller lot, and then now we have a smaller house and larger lot. So 5 acres, pond. Ooh. Got the alpacas, and Sarah's been there, so she's seen it. Did you ride the tractor? No.
She's like, I draw the line.
Yeah, I draw the line at the tractor. Yeah, she was chasing the goats. We're like, Sarah, where's
Come
Sarah?
Back.
I'll be right back, guys. I'm chasing goats.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, right. Everybody experiences something different there. Like Sarah loves to chase goats. You could ride the tractor.
Or ride the alpaca.
Or fish.
There
you go. Haven't tried that one.
I can see my 18-month-old just hopping on.
Yeah.
Woo, let's go.
Oh, totally.
Kids love it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'll tell you that it was one of the best. Not one of the best. It probably single-handedly is the best move that we've ever made. So just to have this space for one through COVID, and then, but I just love, I love that kind of stuff. I get to woodwork out there. I could have done that anyway, at a previous place, but now we got all this room, and we poured a basketball court. For those that know Bree, she's a big basketball girl.
I mean, I'm just kind of married into it, so
yeah, she's married into it, so she's kind of forced into it.
Yeah.
But so we poured a basketball court, and that's been awesome. But the property is like no other.
I see all your sunset pictures.
It's like home.
Looks amazing.
It's
That's
awesome.
I'm happy for you guys. I think I remember actually coming in here, and you had just bought it. Didn't you join Evergreen?
It was previous to that, but
Okay.
we're going up. We're pushing on 2 years now, which is crazy because when people go, oh yeah, last year, right? We're in 2021, and I go, and they're thinking 2019.
Right. No,
Right.
really.
More
I feel like
often than not.
2020 was
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
blink. and it was
lost a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Quick.
And now you have Sarah on your team. Well, I shouldn't say now. You guys have been a team for about a year now. And tell us a little bit about you. I knew you previously, and I remember walking in here, and I'm like, hey, I know you. Why are you here? I'm confused. That was over a year ago
Wait,
now.
why are you here?
Yeah. I mean, it's always weird being like a marketing rep, walking into an office and seeing
Seeing the
somebody that
same
you're used to
face.
seeing somewhere else. You're
Yeah.
like, what did I miss? So,
Yeah.
Right.
you've been here for about a year now. And
Yeah, with Josh for about a year. Been in the industry for about 8 years. I started just strictly doing marketing, like spent my days cold calling agents.
Oh, gosh.
And then just went through different companies and just got into the assisting side of it, kind of junior processing a little bit. And then, here I am with Josh.
And Sarah, not that you're leading this, but where did you go to school?
I went to school at FITM in LA and San Diego.
I used to want to go there.
Yeah.
The San Francisco one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What did
Yeah.
you do there?
Marketing. So
Oh,
I have my
wow.
marketing degree from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
loved it. It
tough
was a
school
great- it was
to get
so
into.
hard,
Yeah. I remember I went to Roseville High School, and they had like a sewing program. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
went and visited FITM
Uh-huh.
in San Francisco, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to do this. And then it's like, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
have
a great school,
Yeah,
great programs.
I've heard amazing things. That's awesome. So from
Yeah.
FITM, you come into mortgage.
Yeah, well, it's just
Weird
kind
how
of
that
weird. Yeah.
Totally.
I got out of college. I was doing event planning for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then just randomly got into the mortgage. I got a job in mortgage doing marketing. Didn't know anything about mortgages. Just was cold calling agents and making these referrals for my LO at the time. Went from there. Just
Wow.
stayed in the business. It's
Once you're
addicting.
in, it's tough to get
I
out.
know.
It really is. Now, tell us a little bit about you personally, because we were saying like when we become friends on Facebook, we kind of get to see each other's personal life. So it's nice not to just be business 24/7.
Yeah. I graduated from Wood Creek in 2006.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Roseville, basically.
Oh my gosh, how
And
funny.
then went to San Diego for college, moved back. I live in Roseville now. I've been living there since 2010. So.
Oh wow. My husband went to Wood Creek.
Oh, really?
And I went
What
to
year was he?
Roseville. He was 10.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're so young. I'm like, I know. I get it. Like, but at this point, I'm like, I'm almost 30. I'm not young anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I
My
feel
brother
like-
was 04, and I was like, oh.
Ugh, so old.
It's so weird just to hear those. You're like 10, 05, 13.
So Josh, no.
I'm like pre 2000 somewhere.
Yeah, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
That makes you sound super
That's
young.
right. That's right. Thank you.
You're young at heart.
And you guys been a
I
team.
am sometimes too young at heart.
I will say that. This is honestly, I don't say this to everybody, and I don't say this on a podcast, but this is like honestly one of the funnest offices to walk into. You guys are just always
thanks,
so
Bree.
welcoming, and you're a riot in the way that you're like, he's not being serious. I'm like, oh, he's not? No, you'll get to
Like,
know
you'll
it.
just
Like,
have to
Just
figure it out.
ignore him.
yeah.
Right.
Girl, just don't listen to anything he says. I'm like, okay.
I know, you're always like, is he being serious?
Like, I don't know what's happening right now.
And you're like, and he doesn't even know if he's
I
being
know.
serious. You know,
Yeah.
but he doesn't.
Right. That's probably the case.
Yeah.
Actually, we're pretty lucky to have, I think, in the very short period of time that Sarah's been with us and with me, we're super lucky to have Sarah.
guys
because
are a great
I,
team.
it's really hard to jive with somebody and work well with somebody and have that support and feel like you have, each other's back and whatnot. And she's an awesome listener. She understands my crazy mind. It's like, as we were talking earlier before you came in or when you came in, it's like organized chaos a little bit sometimes. And
life, yeah.
like, we're very particular about how we do our business, of course, and want to make sure the client's taken care of, but at the same time have fun. Cause like life is short,
Right.
It's like, kind of like if we didn't know a little bit about you, we choose who we want to work with in terms of like our referral partners, or we try to, right? But if we don't want to work with somebody, it's okay to say no sometimes
Right.
because life is too short. So with that, it's great to have Sarah.
Yeah, and it's really.
I'd like to say the feelings mutual, but I'm not going to.
She's shaking her head, so it must be.
I was nodding.
She nodded. I saw it. She's all.
What did her eyes say?
No.
What did her eyes say?
She's
Just
like,
kidding.
Bree, no, he's lying. Well, and it is cool to see, because I was saying this earlier. It's like I go in and I talk to a lot of loan officers, and really the goal is to have somebody like Sarah, who can be there for what loan officers are really supposed to. Their job is like to educate your client, get them, through the process. But then you have somebody who's there to hold their hand,
right?
So that way you're able to be out in the field to do what you really are supposed to do. And a lot of loan officers strive to get there, and they go through person after person after person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they never find that right person. So It is cool. I know, like, when I come in here, I'm like, you guys really seem like a good cohesive team, and even working together on certain files that have dragged on and kept dragging on, and I'm like, why is this not going away? It's like you guys are still just like on top of it, and that's huge. I tell people all the time, insurance is one of those things that we want to be here for it to make sure it gets done correctly, and that nobody has a headache, and things of course happen all the time. But it's amazing to me how many times it can be an issue because of the person requesting insurance. You're like, it's really not that hard, but it is. It's part of it's a little sliver of the whole transaction, but it's a major part of the transaction if it doesn't get handled correctly. So I only get to see like a little piece of what you guys do, but it's awesome what you guys do. And now you've been here at Evergreen has it been 2 years?
No. We recent, and I've known of Evergreen for a very long time. Don Burton, the owner, is just a super good cat.
I've heard great things,
as I say. Sarah says that I say everybody's a cool cat, but that's not always the case.
They're a cool cat.
They're totally cool cats. She's all, are they?
She's like, no, they're not.
Like, it's okay. Just remember,
Dawn is though.
Dawn is a cool cat. Dawn is.
I've heard that.
So,
has it been a year?
It's been, we're pushing right there.
Okay.
Yeah, we're basically like a year. So I had talked about coming here a while back, a handful of times. And, to be back in town center, which is, near to my house. And I love it here. We had an office here years ago and was here for 9 years. And I'm back working with, people that I know and love. And we're just building out, our team to the way we want it to be.
Yeah.
And again, just having the right amount of the right people and the right amount of people. Like you can have too many people on a team or too many people on a court, whatever. So you just have to have the right people doing the right job. As I say, and Sarah knows this, it's like we want people to be doing what is in their highest and best, because otherwise it's like, what's the point?
Right.
If I'm sitting there, I know how to put a file together and I do it all the time, and I'm very big on the tech and love all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to stay my lane within that. But part of that is having that support team, like Sarah and Vanessa now, and Katie, who helps with our marketing and stuff, to allow us all to be our best.
I think that shows with Katie specifically. I remember coming into the office and you're like, yeah, this is Katie. She's going to help me with my marketing. And then like fast forward 6 months, she's like running everybody's marketing here. I'm like
doing everyone's.
So that escalated quickly. And it shows, you're trying to get people to like where they are best suited. And you're like, man, you could do so much more for everybody. You can help me here, but you can also help everybody. So it is cool to see, people. She's young and she's, was kind of
ambitious.
Yeah, ambitious. She's like, I'm going to do this. And she's killing it. So it's kind of cool to see that if somebody take off and do that.
Well, just imagine, you could think back to probably all of us probably can, like what jobs have we been in that we were not happy, right? But it's a job. And it's like, our parents used to say, well, it's a job.
Right.
And it's like, well, a job doesn't have to be
miserable,
not fun or miserable, right? It doesn't have to be. So when it is fun, it's going to have its moments like anything, right?
Yeah.
But when it is fun, it's like, it's a heck of a lot easier to be your best when you're in a good space.
Yep. We were just talking about Armand and I.
Yeah, Armand.
we literally had the conversation.
He's behind the camera.
Yeah, I've been pronouncing his name wrong, but for over a year. But we had this conversation on the way up. Our previous employers that we worked with, it was like we just were not happy, and you just feel like you just kind of going through the motions. Like you don't want to be the person to make a move. You're like, oh, I feel like I just did this. Like, come on. And then you find that spot, and you're like, oh, this is it. Like this is where I was meant to be. And it seems like you guys have really found that within Evergreen.
Yeah, we have. It's hard to the industry's changed so much, right? And each, people that are on the other side of this, whether they're other LOs or whatever, people in the industry, you know, you could move to another space and think that the grass is going to be greener,
Right.
and it's different grass. It's not necessarily greener. At the end of the day, you're still going to have operational concerns, you know, from time to time. You're still going to have product concerns. You're still going to have all that. But we're going to try to do everything we can and make sure that we work alongside a platform that has the resources and tools that we need.
Yeah.
And with that, and then not only that, to make sure that we feel like we're cared for, much like we care for our people and, you know, referral partners that we work with.
Real estate agents.
Yeah. I mean, so what do you have to add to that, Sarah?
No, I think it's just finding what's important to you, you know, and it's like Josh said, you're always going to have those issues, every company, but focus on the most important things. And I feel like you'll find yourself there eventually.
I definitely can attest to that too. It's like nowhere's perfect.
Yeah.
But you know, if with any move you make, if it gets a little better, you're like, okay, this was worth it.
Right.
Like for me, I mean, I've been at Sky for a year and a half, but it was the best move I could have ever made for my family, for, I mean, everything. It was just amazing. But
I've seen you like in probably multiple walks of your journey, and you are, from my perspective anyway, your best self. I think.
Thank you. I really do feel that way. And I feel like you said, you want to, when you work for somebody that is awesome, it's like you want to do good for them. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like when you have a team that, like, our team is so cohesive, but it wasn't always, you know, we had bumps and it was clunky at first and we're like, what are we doing? And but once you get that, like, okay, we got this, like, it's good. And I think that's kind of where you guys are at now. I mean, I know when you request quotes and things, or we're doing EOIs, I work with Sarah more than I do with Josh. But obviously, you know, a lot of times I come in the office, you're just like slammed, and Josh is like, like, we're just gonna talk. Guess what I made today? Like, and I love it. I love the energy. So you and I we only get to, you know, talk briefly, but really having that team that it's like, you know your role, Sarah, you know your role, and now you have Vanessa and then Katie doing the marketing. It's huge. It makes a big difference. Like you kind of have the perfect storm. You have a great company you guys are working for, a good team. You're adding on people to your team, not too fast, but you're kind of making it it work perfectly.
Careful growth. Yeah,
and it's important, especially with what you guys do. I mean, what I wanted to talk about and what I brought or wanted to bring you on a lot about was like where we're at, obviously, with the fires, and you do a ton of business up in those Placerville areas that are being hit heavily with the fire insurance. But in lending, like, is there anything different that is like a standard home in Roseville versus a home up in Placerville on 20 acres? It has to be different, right?
100%.
I would imagine. I mean, you're looking at two different worlds.
Sarah can chime in on this one too, I'm sure.
Because I mean, it's fair. You worked for another lender. He or she, both the people you worked for, didn't do a lot of that business.
It's so different for me. I mean, because I was in Roseville, I was in Gold River, and so I didn't do a lot of properties up in this area.
Right.
So now, like, I'm learning all of it, like with the fires and the fair plans and everything. Like, it was hard with this the recent fire and stuff. I'm like, what do you mean we have to like keep shopping for insurance for like a couple of weeks and they're denying it? Like that was all new to me.
Yeah.
Right. Or determining whether or not, you know, you need to worry about the cost of the insurance to clarify if somebody qualifies or not. So, you know, obviously we encourage people, you know, to get quotes all the time.
Right.
You know, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you that know, like, I have a, you know, set template that's like, boom, I'm going to send it to Bree and, you know, and have her quote it, and it's to introduce the client to Bree, and then from there it's really kind of the two of you guys, which is awesome. But you know, it's that kind of interface and those relationships that really make a big difference in terms of what we do. And there are others sometimes, you know, like Sky Insurance may not be the one, and same for us. It's like we may not be the one for a client, but the insurance definitely is a key factor in the qualification. And a lot of times, you know, it's like one of those things is like, oh, if I have my car paid off, I probably don't need full coverage, right? I mean, is that really the case?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people don't really pay attention to the coverages they need. You know, they're like, we just want the cheapest. Well, naturally, the cheapest isn't always the best. Make sure you're comparing the coverages and to work alongside a company that knows. Like, you don't want, you know, the cheapest is not the best, but with that, you want to make sure that, you know, it's also affordable.
Be competitive. That's what we always say. Is like, we don't want to be the most expensive, but we don't want to be the cheapest. You kind of want to be in the middle somewhere that's competitive. And it's an interesting point you bring up about the car insurance. Oh, my car's paid off, I don't need it. And a lot of people 4 years ago, pre-fires, had that mentality. Now we see it's nice to see it. It's almost like a switch went off. Like, okay, I'm buying this home and I want to make sure it's protected correctly, because you hear of these horror stories of people who weren't insured correctly and they're getting half of what their house is worth, and they're
Right.
like, can't even rebuild with that.
Yeah.
Right.
So and I love the way you guys refer, because a lot of people will just say, hey, here's the address, can you get us a quote? And you're like, I don't want to do that. Just talk to the client and you guys figure it out.
Right.
Because it's like a lot of times we're like, hey, we need to know, do you have a pit bull? Do you have, are you
their employment
putting
info,
horses?
all
What is
that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like so much better for us
birth.
to be able to talk to them and then just, hey, here's an address, let us know, especially in these fire areas, because it's education. It has to be. And I'm sure that's what a lot of you guys do in these areas, is educate people on the difference of living in Roseville versus living up in Placerville.
Well, like I always say, like I just say at the end of the day, we're educators at heart.
Right.
You know, that's all we are. So just making sure that the client has the appropriate information to be able to make the decision, you know, moving forward. But having that information is essential. So whether it's, you know, insurance or product but part of that is that the engagement that's needed through the process. You know, for me to sit and ask those questions versus like you and your team is completely different, right?
Right.
I mean,
It's like I wouldn't try to do a loan.
Right.
I don't know anything about loans.
We have to be careful. We talk about a lot of stuff that crosses over into insurance and crosses over into like, you know, law, legal stuff and titling, and
I'm sure you deal with that probably a lot because of you're so much in contact with the client. Like,
yeah, a lot of it's good with Josh though too, because people will ask me questions whether it's insurance or we're talking about legalities of stuff or like trust or something, and it's like we can only give so much information to where we just want to be like, talk to your CPA here's our insurance referral, because we don't want to give wrong information. We don't want to steer them the wrong direction. So
refreshing to have that mentality, because a lot of people do. They just want to control the whole
Right.
thing. And I get it. You know, you're like, you don't want to relinquish that control of like, what if they say the wrong thing to my client? But it's like, at the end of the day, we have to ask all those questions, because you would hate to close your escrow, somebody come inspect and then find out you have 2 pit bulls and now your policy's no good.
Yeah.
You know? And that happens. It does, unfortunately. It's like when we don't know all that information up front, it can happen. So it's definitely nice to be able to get all that. I always tell people, can you do a loan if somebody says, hey, what are the rates today? And you're like, well, gosh, that's a fully loaded question. Like, what's your credit score? You know, like, that's why I always say, people are like, can you do a quick quote on this? I'm like, well, we can, but like, just know it doesn't just apply to anybody, you know?
Totally.
So it's refreshing.
Reiterate the same thing all the time.
Yeah. So in particular, in like these areas, like, I mean, you do business other places.
Oh,
but
sure.
For the most part, I see.
By the way, we work outside of El Dorado County.
Oh, yeah. By the way, about that. I mean, I would say a lot of your quotes I see are in El Dorado County.
El Dorado County, yeah.
But is that like a specialty, do you feel like? Like, do you see it being an issue, like an online lender come into this and say, here we are. I'm not going to say who. I almost just did, but so-and-so.
But so-and-so mortgage.
Yeah, so-and-so mortgage. They come in and like.
It's actually a new company that's coming about.
So-and-so mortgage. Great marketing.
Yeah.
You know, they say, okay, I'm going to use this online person because they're cheaper. Like, for you as a lender who's here physically in El Dorado County, is that like, that has to raise a red flag for real estate agents, for anybody, right?
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, Sarah?
I mean, I think it just goes back to who you know. I mean, we work with who we want to work with. If people want to work with us, then I feel like you have a great reputation up in the county here, and us being so centrally located. But I do think it's better to be present and have people. We have people walking in all the time. Right. I mean, even just being in town center, they'll pop in and say hi, and then they could start talking to Josh about a refinance. Yeah. So rather than picking up the phone or, oh man, I need to call that mortgage company. You know what I mean? I think that's
like
a
having
benefit.
that, like, okay, if something goes wrong on our deal, like Josh, I can literally go yell at him right here.
Yeah. Or call me and I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Go to say no. I'm just kidding.
I'm your first line of defense.
Sort of.
If it's that.
But it's important, because I've heard that a lot in these areas, like in Roseville, Rockland, whatever. But in these areas, when you have an online lender, a lot of listing agents I've heard are like, heck no. Like, you don't know anything, the first thing about insurance in these areas, or just the loan in general in those areas.
Terms of like getting your offer accepted, right? And it's been a thing. You know, we used to advise, you know, the client to prepare a love letter, right? It's like, tell us about yourself, send a picture, what animals do you have, do you have kids? Why is this house important to you? You know, all those things. And people still do it. And technically, I know that there's we have to be very careful about that now, you know, from the real estate side.
I'm like,
people still do it. As an owner, if I was selling, I'd want to see it, right? Because Jody and I, for example, whenever we sold a property, we may not have taken that highest and best offer, right? We took the offer with somebody that we knew, was going to fit the mold of the house,
Right.
in the neighborhood, in the neighbors, and
Yeah, you want to make sure you're giving your old neighbors good neighbors.
Right. Yeah. What comes around goes around.
Yeah.
It's not only that,
Agreed.
it's small town, but at the end of the day, regardless, it's like I always tell people. I used to make the joke. It's like you can ask around about us, and if you hear anything bad, they're lies.
Yeah.
But or they just didn't ask enough questions.
Right.
There's always a story behind the story. Like if something does get a little squirrely, it's going to happen. But why did
We're
it
human.
get squirrely?
Right.
And that's the thing. Like if people do work with an online lender, they're not going to get the touch and feel and finesse. And I like to say that we are going to offer competitive pricing, but like give all this kind of touch or this boutique-y feel.
Yeah.
This a family relationship, if that's what they're looking for. If they're all business, that's fine, no problem.
Right.
We can be all business. So in fact, Sarah knows, like, one of our questions that I have in our database is, how do they like to be communicated with?
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So
huge.
like, is it call, text, email? Is there a time slot so we're not calling and texting them at the wrong time?
Right.
I mean, are you going to get that from an online lender? Probably not.
No.
Are they going to, if it's, so all walks of life, deal with all walks of life. But at the end of the day, to be able to work with somebody that's here and local, regardless of us being here present, like we can still work Amador County,
Yeah.
Placer,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
SAC, and
anywhere.
and people don't have to come in and, just obviously because of the virtual stuff. And I was doing that prior to COVID,
I remember that.
Quite a bit. And most of my meetings have all been virtual. I do screen shares and love all that stuff and could still, but it's nice to have the face there with you.
Yeah, if you need it.
Yeah.
Well, and like you see people, I mean, for me, I know you probably know the same people that are moving out of the state. They're like, we're getting out of the state, but we still want to do business in California because they have a lot of referral partners here. People have no problem with that. It's like, yeah, sure, go move to where you got to go move, but they know that the market still. You're still relevant. It's not truly like an online lender. People are okay working with you. I mean, we don't hardly meet any of our clients anymore. It's all online and it's all, but they like the idea of like, okay, like they still know this market really well. Like I'll have lenders be like, hey, are you guys licensed in Florida? I'm like, why would we be? Like, we don't know Florida. Like, it's just not our, I mean, Florida's a whole different beast and it's kind of the same
it's not your
type.
forte.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, it's got huge issues that we just don't deal with here.
Sure.
So, you kind of look at it that way where
it's like a jack of all, master of none. You don't want to,
yes,
you want to
be good at certain things.
Be good at a handful of things and just stay the lane.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important. And it's like, I think COVID has taught us one thing, and it's like, you don't have to be here. At the end of the day, I walk into offices that used to be full of 30 plus people and there's 5 people. They're all working from home.
Right.
Some people have moved out of state and they're not even telling people. They're like, yeah, I moved out, but don't tell anybody. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. Right. So, all right. Sorry about that. We had a quick little break, a quick little interruption. I said we've done this podcast. I think
somebody had to go potty.
No, we've done this.
We
podcast.
won't say who it was.
We're all looking at. I just accidentally looked at Sarah.
Just kidding. That didn't happen.
We had a little UPS delivery. It's okay. I mean, it happens. It's 20-something podcasts we've recorded. We haven't had an interruption. So we'll figure it out.
Come hang out with the Mottashed team.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're there.
You'll get plenty of them. We have to
Plenty of
lock every door in here. Right?
Literally shut all the blinds. Nobody's allowed in here.
Nobody's allowed in.
But we were talking a little bit about, like online lenders, and we all like to hate on them, just like we like to hate on online insurance companies, because it's really about that personal touch and feel. And I wanted to obviously give you guys a chance to kind of share. I mean, I can tell what's different about you guys, but kind of share what's different about you. Why? I mean, you are a wildly successful team. So what makes you successful? What sets you apart from other lenders? I mean, you look on every corner and there's a lender. I mean, everywhere you look, there's a loan company or an insurance company. So what kind of sets you guys apart from everybody else?
Sure. That's a great question. And I'm very curious to hear what Sarah has to say after. So without question, I don't even really have to think about this. At the end of the day, when I got in this business, I always told myself, whatever business I want to get into, I want to work with people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it mildly makes me emotional because when I say we care about the client, like I legitimately care about the client, like sitting at home, and thinking, okay, well, what's best for this person? Sometimes I'll dream about a solution. Right. Mm-hmm. And not awesome. To say that it's like, it's taken away from my family or whatever, but it's just, I'm very lucky and blessed to do what we do and to be able to sit down at night and have my kids look at me and be proud that we're helping,
I just got chills.
And it's, sorry.
No, I got chills.
I'm not trying to like get emotional here, but and I've never really been asked that question, at least live, but it really matters. So, but with that, like cutting all the emotion out, like, not that we
Don't
need
cut
to,
it
but
out.
we don't have to cut it out. But like, like I said, when we're dealing with, we can deal with all walks of life. If somebody's like they just want to get straight to the point, tell me they're calling like, what are your rates? What are your rates? And we were just talking about that, right? So it's like,
What the cheapest and best.
yeah, what are the cheapest and best? Well, cheapest and best isn't always the best,
Right.
Obviously. So with that, a lot of times, if people don't know the questions to ask, they don't know. They're not going to know the particular answers that they need, right? They think that they know what they need by doing what? Pulling up their phone and looking up YouTube. And YouTube, whoever it may be, is telling them to do X, Y, and Z. Well, X, Y, and Z may be not here. It may be out of state. It may be
may not even pertain to
you.
Yeah.
It's like saying, if I had a bloody nose and you had a bloody nose, we went to the doctor, they could be two different symptoms, right? So the solution for both of us is different.
Yeah.
So, and we treat the client the same.
Yeah.
You have to sit and ask, and Sarah knows, like, I'm probably overly anal about, like, how we track our files, asking the appropriate questions so that we can get to the real nuts and bolts of what's going on. And like, why are you wanting to buy here? And, if they own multiple properties, like, are you thinking about holding them for a while? And if so, why? And then we're big on watching the market. I usually have it up on the TV. But so I watch the market close. I have other tools that, that we utilize from a resource standpoint where we're getting information about the market, not just the realtor, right, providing the client the information. But I love to talk about that kind of stuff quite a bit with the client. And I can. There's no problem for us to be able to do it. And it works well when we're in conjunction with like certain referral partners, right? We're not saying anything that is going to overstep them, obviously, but when they're talking about, Josh, what do you think is going to happen in the market? I mean, Sarah hears me, like I go, well, let me tell you why. And it's not just, the why is based off of, information. And if that is, statistical in nature, right? So, and just kind of keeping our pulse on that. And if we don't have that, much like if, an insurance company doesn't have the pulse on what's going on with a fire and what's the containment need to be in order to bind a policy? Oh, and if I refinance, if I refinance, can I refinance right now if there's a fire that's 10 miles away from my house?
Yeah.
A lot of times people don't know that. And so just all those other particular things, to help build that relationship. It's not like we're building a relationship because we need to retain the client, right? Yeah, we want to. But at that point in time, we put everything out there, and if the relationship's there, great. Yeah. And more often than not, once we get somebody, where we have had the opportunity to talk to them, I think the relationship is developed. Sarah. And then from that point forward, it's like, then you have awesome people like Sarah to help kind of keep that same, connection all the way through the process, and it just makes it really nice
and smooth.
Yeah.
And your job really, Sarah, is to like guide them through. You get them all set up. If I'm an outsider looking in, get them all set up, and you kind of get like the nitty gritty little things done.
Yeah.
That have to.
Yeah. So basically, Josh calls it like my baby. Like once it's in my court, I just kind of take it and I
nurture
kind
it,
of push him away from it. Not really, but unless I need him.
It's not kind of. She's pretty aggressive about it, actually.
Strong arms.
Stay your lane.
But I just guide them basically through the end of closing, and of course, like follow up if they need anything else. But I agree with Josh on how we separate ourselves from everything. I mean, we're always available, and working with Josh and his team is it's just more family-like. Like I'll be on the phone with somebody who's buying a house, and they might mention that they want to repave the driveway, and Josh will be in the back like, call my guy, tell him to call my guy, I have a guy, he'll get you a good deal. So now we like have all these contractors that like Josh knows somehow, but it's just little things like that that I think keeps the clients coming back.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And we love
it's like having those referrals to even just somebody pour concrete. Changes.
Yeah.
They're like, they're not even from here. They don't know anybody. So having that like Rolodex of people that you can trust to be able to refer your clients to is huge. Yeah. That's a good one. I've actually never heard anybody say that.
It's supporting people we know, trust, and love, you know, and there's not just one. Sometimes there's multiples, and it's the right person for the right job. Much like a realtor is going to refer us, or a lender or a realtor is going to refer you, or another client. So like all that stuff it's a big deal. Yeah. But we're also, with all that, the relationship, aside from that, the product and all that, we have everything that there is to know or have, and then some. I mean, creative stuff where we're doing, some of the stuff I probably can't necessarily talk about just yet,
Ooh.
but it's that cool. So come back soon.
I can't wait to
Click
see
the link
it.
below.
Right. Let me think about some things that I can come
Yeah,
up with.
what are we going to do?
No, but like those, so we have all the other stuff that your online lender is going to be able to do, right? And beyond that, and so the relationship is essential, and that's where it starts from. And from there, the rest of it, it's like the willingness to want to, like, if you love your kids, right, you're going to want to be a part of their lives.
Right.
You're going to want to take them to their soccer games and to this and to that. Right. It doesn't feel like it's a burden.
Right.
And the same thing is for, like, when you care about somebody, it's easy to want to do the extra work for them. Right. And that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. And that's awesome because a lot of people do it just to do it. It's like, I got into it when I was 18 and here we are now,
And it pays well.
And it pays well.
So
there you go. Yeah. So it's cool to see kind of the different perspective of it of like, no, we do it. And I mean,
great question.
Like we talked about, like these homes that you guys do, again, you don't just do El Dorado County.
Yeah,
but
it's all good.
It's a lot of times it's way more work than just your average home in Roseville or Sacramento. So you are kind of taking that extra step of really holding hands and making sure things get done. I mean, you have a bunch of different things that they have to do, inspections and all these crazy things up here we just don't have down there. So and I know you talked a tiny bit about, you guys are really, you have your thumb on the current times, and I think that's kind of a big question everybody has, like, are we in a bubble? Is this going to burst? Like, what's going to happen? And I'm interested to hear your perspective of it, because you're like, people ask me this, I'm like, oh, here we go, because everybody for the most part has kind of said the same thing. So I want to hear your guys' perspective of what's going on with this market.
Well, it's funny you said that everybody is saying the same thing. So it leads me to say, like, okay, what are you saying? And then I'll say the same thing. Next thing you know, everybody in the market saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Whether or not it's true or not is the question, right?
That's very true.
And I was the kid in class. It's always like, well, I don't understand why that's that way. And they're like, well, it's in writing right here, Josh. And I'm like, I still don't get why it has to be this way.
Right.
Right. So unfortunately, I'm always the one that's going to ask the questions and fight. Sarah probably knows, like, if an underwriter comes back and says, hey, Josh, I don't think we can do this, and I'm like, no, if you look here in the guidelines and then, it says it looks discretion based to me. Why don't we, push to Fannie or Freddie or VA or whatever it is and try to, gain the exception. And we win a lot of deals that way, by challenging those things too. But I think, in terms of where the market's at right now and where it's going, here's kind of the methodology or the thought process I have about it is, and there's all sorts of different information that I've gathered to be able to kind of say, and it's not like, we're just kind of saying, hey, what's it look like?
Hey, what's going to happen in the next
right.
12 months? I need to know. If you don't say it right, you're never allowed on my podcast again.
You'll note this for later. Anybody that feels that they need to move out of state, or like there is no doom and gloom, the market isn't going to all of a sudden fall out, and I'm kind of being kind of silly right now, but it will be very unlikely that it'll happen despite inflationary numbers, all that, right? So yes, is inflation a problem? And I don't know how much you guys know or care about all this stuff, but inflation is like, how much is this bottle of water going to cost a year ago, 2 years ago, compared to what it costs today, right? So is the affordability still there? Now, yes, it's more expensive for buyers. We know that, but it's also expensive to rent.
Super expensive.
And then people go, well, I'm going to wait for the market to fall out because the foreclosure market's going to start to tick up. Yeah, it might, but guess what? We had something that was put in place back in 08, 9, 10, 11, where we TRID and all kinds of other, compliance things that were put in place that changed the market to protect the consumer and to protect the market a little bit. But then with that, we're also in a position now compared to then where the market it has equity. People aren't spending, kind of false money, right? So if anybody, let's say, lost their job, for example, in a husband-wife scenario, and one lost the job through COVID or was furloughed or whatever it may have been, if the income dropped, it's safe to say that, the household income dropped. Now, if they're living their penny pension and they're barely making their mortgage payment, guess what? Now, the mortgage companies are like Johnny on the spot. In some cases, we have people calling us up going, hey, Josh, we didn't even know, but we're in a forbearance right now. Mm-hmm. And it was put in place. And I'm like,
Even if they just inquired about it.
Yeah, they're just like, inquire before you wire. Sorry, that's a side joke, Sarah. It's funny. It'll be on another podcast.
I'm like, what did we open? What can of worms did we open?
But it's, so I was just thinking about acquiring 41 and I lost my train of thought. But basically that the market, going back to the foreclosure, say you have the husband and wife, one lost their job, right? And maybe they couldn't make their mortgage payments. They have a forbearance option. Right. Back in the day, like to get a short sale or any of that kind of stuff, it took months and they're having to apply and send this and they're sending it to a person and they're not around. So there's immediate safety nets put in place. But the bigger thing is if somebody was forced to sell and even move out of state, guess what they have?
Equity.
There you go.
Tons of it. Yeah.
Equity.
I was talking just on their way
More
up here. Yeah. And that is true. And nobody has talked about that on the podcast of like, if we do have something happen where foreclosures are happening, people could pull some cash out or sell or move.
Right. Pull cash out, consolidate debt.
Yeah.
Like pull cash out till you get back up on your feet. Not that you want to use that, but it is a
there,
resource.
yeah.
And guess what? It's cheap money, guys.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to look at the debt load. I say this a lot, but in terms of like, what's the smartest decision? If you have to answer one question, it's what is the rate at which I'm paying for any debt that I have outstanding? Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. It's that simple. The term doesn't matter so much other than it does affect the monthly payment, but that's the biggest question. But that's the short story. So I think the market's going to be fine.
You've said what pretty much most people have said. I thought you were going to be.
So you're saying I'm like everybody else. Thanks, Bree.
No, but you brought more insight to it that we really haven't talked about was, the whole having so much equity, which we didn't have that 10 or whenever the meltdown happened. Yeah, 10 years ago, I guess, at this point. And that's an interesting point because nobody's brought that up. But I think most people have the same, most educated people in our industry have the same kind of outlook of like, look, we should be good. Like a lot of people say, and a lot of people who are, I shouldn't say uneducated, but uneducated in our field think, well, I'm going to wait till the market crashes. And it's like, well, okay, but who's to say in 5 years the interest rates are going to still be at 3%?
Right.
Exactly.
Right? Like if we're going to wait for 5 years for the market to crash and then you're going to have a 10% interest rate, like it doesn't make any sense. So I'm glad that you said that because I'm always like, as a consumer, I'm like, what do you got to say?
Yeah, what do you got to say? Because I'm trying to figure out if it's to sell and buy.
No, but for my husband and I were like, gosh, it'd be great. We all have equity in our homes right now, but like, where do you go? We're not moving out of state. Like we have all our family here. So for us, it's not an option to be like, yeah, let's take our equity and move to Texas. Like it's just not going to happen. So we're pretty content here.
Right. Yeah. And people talk about like the flattening a little bit, but it's going to be temporary. But
it's the time. We're in the November, December happening. It always slows at this time. I had a little mini panic like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, what is going on? And
this isn't a mini panic. Okay, I was making sure.
A mani petty. I went and got a mani petty.
That's the word I was looking for.
I talk too fast. I know. I've been told that my whole life. But I did. I'm like, why is it slow? Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, it was like, whoosh, it got super busy again. I'm like, okay, we're good. It's
we're good.
Yeah, the time of
normal time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Sure, of course.
I'm like happy you came on, and you definitely put gave some insight of things that really I haven't talked about. And I think that's what I'm always trying to look for, like something that's just different. And I know when I come in here, it's always different vibe in the best way possible.
Take that as a compliment.
The best way possible. Like, why do you think I come in here so often? I'm like, hey, what are you guys up to?
It's because Sarah's the instigator.
I really feel like Sarah and I need to like go to happy hours and then get to know each other more.
Yeah. Like I said, she's a good wingman.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
wing woman.
I guess.
You guys could maybe do mani petties.
Yeah, let's do mani petties. Seriously, I'm down.
Yes.
Right.
What's the best way to get a hold of you guys? I mean, I know up here you have all your info.
Sure.
I always laugh. Your email cracks me up because it's the longest email in my thing. I'm like, okay,
it's 2 alphabets.
Yeah, I love it.
It's
awesome.
2 alphabets.
So is it online, Facebook,
yeah.
Instagram?
So honestly, if you just look up our name, and it's a tough last name a little bit. I always like this. So the quickest way to remember how to spell it is Mott, like the applesauce, the letter A, and shed, like the one in your backyard.
There you go.
Mottashed.
He actually said when I came on, say it like Mottashed. I'm like, okay, I'm here with like Josh Mottashed.
Or what does Siri say? Josh
Mottashed.
Mottashed. Yeah, Josh Mottashed.
Okay, that's your new name, Mottashed.
It's a unique one, but just look us up online. I mean, we're wherever. We're on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And obviously we have our webpage, YouTube, etc.
Yeah, you guys do good online.
Yeah,
YouTube.
So we and we're gonna. So that's the quickest way.
Okay.
We can also, we have a quick little QR code. If somebody wanted to scan it, we can give you that. So there's just a handful of ways. But
awesome.
phone number, if anybody needs it. I mean, obviously it'll probably be somewhere at the video, but 916-798-1252. And our team line is 916-850-2524.
Sarah's like, don't call that one.
Sarah's like,
The only one that answers it.
she's like, I put it on D&D
Yeah.
at 4:59.
Yeah.
She does.
No, you guys are always available. I know when we had quickly, we had a recent little snag and it was like 6:00 at night. We're texting back and forth, and it's just cool to have that open relationship.
Well,
where you're like, hey,
right?
This is part of the business. You know, we're not. No one's perfect. So.
But having somebody there is half the battle.
It is.
Right?
It is, and that's what a lot of people say.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, you guys. Really
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having
You guys
us.
are awesome. And
Armand. Thank
yes,
you.
Armand, thank you. I've been calling him Armin for the last 1.5 years, so I'm gonna go dig a hole and die.
He's like, I go by both.
Yeah, it's fine, you idiot. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate it, and we hope you all have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Bree. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.